Hello again and welcome back to Yosemite Valley Zoo. We are in the next episode and potentially you've just seen Koali Zoo a few minutes ago where the lady designer put off her new video. It is episode number 3. That means the next episode will be on this channel. So this will be potentially for the moment one of the last Yosemite Valley episodes until next week, because I'll be busy building in Koali Zoo, which I'm looking forward to quite a bit because I have such a great idea what I want to build, and I cannot wait to really tackle that. I already had the zoo in my fingers, so you can actually be very excited, because I feel like I'm going for something that really is turning out to be cool looking and very unique. But anyways, that should not be the topic of today's video. Today's video is all about the snow leopard, and we are going to talk about this habitat in particular because that will be more or less not setting the tone, but it will be, one of the first big cat habitats. Even though the snow leopard is by far the smallest of the big cats we have in this area, it is for me it's one of the greatest, because I feel the snow leopard is just so good looking. It is such a majestic animal. But the thing is, I'm not really a cat person. I'm more like a dog person, but I really admire all the big cats. Like, I don't know why, but they have something very specific to them. I really want to interact with them, even though I know that this is potentially a bit dangerous, I guess is the right word. But well, I wanted to get in here with a little bit of a habitat that can provide the snow leopard a nice little area, but yet be very functional in our zoo itself. Because the idea about what I'm doing here is having a little area that is mainly in the shadow. So for most of the times of the day, this area is a bit in the shadow, and I intentionally chose this position to make sure that this is also like one of the cooler areas for the snow leopard. We have to work a lot with coolers here anyway, so yeah, it's a bit tricky, and the good thing about Yosemite Valley is that at least in winter times and stuff, you do have some kind of doable temperatures. I'm not saying that it's like very much likely for the snow leopard to live there, but you have some decent temperatures over there that you can work with. So it's not out of this world to have a snow leopard in a Yosemite-based zoo. So that's why I still believe it's a good choice. But yeah, it will be in a high contrast to the other big cats that are around, and this is why I chose the location to the very right hand side next to the Siberian tiger, so that both cats we have that do need a little bit of a colder environment are close to each other, because we can use synergy effects also in terms of energy consumption and stuff in the zoo. So yeah, these were the things I kept in mind while building these habitats over here. Now, this is the first of a few episodes where we are going to tackle the interior also of the habitat. So for now, we built a lot of the exterior based habitats, or like the half dome, which was half, it still was exterior, if you will. We built the pronghorn, we built the bison, and all these animals that live mainly outside. So we just have some sleeping areas to give them the hard shelter they need, and that's basically about it. There's not much more about these animals. But this in particular, and all the big cats, they will get an indoor area. For once, to give them some shade and some area to recover, and also some privacy, but also to get into a bit more of a realism aspect of zoo life in general, but also to have something that is a bit more realistic in terms of how you would see that in an actual zoo. You can see I'm preparing a little table over here, which is actually for the food of the animals. I mean, yes, sorry, the snow alia would not get, or snow leopard, sorry for the little inside joke here, but it won't get too many fruits, but it will get a lot of meat and stuff, but there is no meat I could use, so this is why I used at least a little bit of fruits and stuff to actually get the feeling that there would be food that is provided over there. I don't know, it just like I just had the idea to make a table that is functional, but the guest cannot see it because it's hidden behind the concrete wall, just maybe a little bit, which is ever so slightly, and there. But yeah, so one thing I forgot is a trade center close into this area to make sure that they deliver the animals a little bit more. I had some issues here and there, and basically also I was too stupid to understand that I didn't connect the pathway to the habitat, but I left it in to give me a little idea to talk about one thing that we haven't tackled, and this is actually the overall habitat management and stuff. And there is so much going on in this zoo where I wanted to, make this all look a bit more nice and stuff. And in this episode, we will, make a lot more or less like a blueprint how it will be in the end. You can see I had some issues with escaping, so I needed to build a lot more around here with some rocks and make the overall, terrain work and stuff a bit more, safe for the animals. And this one in particular over here was a bit of a tricky thing to find out why they were able to jump onto my fence. So I was kind of looking at it, and you can see they did just easily jump on it, and then there was like a very, very small gap in between, I guess, and they just used it. I really don't know why they consider that there is a gap, but I kind of figured out to make it this way with having a glass behind that. And I found this also very, it works because it is somehow a little bit realistic, since you want to have also the one-sided glass, and on the other hand side you want to make sure that your guests are a bit more safe from the animals, and that's why you do have this on both sides. I'm still a bit confused why they do break out on that side, but on the other side where it is basically straight and the connection between the staff area and this one, they don't have that issue. But I'm just fine with it. I was just lowering it down a bit more in the end to make sure it doesn't look too gigantic. But yeah, we can see with a little bit of snow and stuff in here in the habitat, it already looks a bit nicer with the snow elements in there and the eyes, but I'm still not a big fan of the eyes. Sorry for that, but the eyes is just way too bluish. Again, the texture is trippy and great, but oh man, it's just so blue. And I think it's even more obvious in the more national parks when you use it. In the polar area, you can kind of get rid of this by just using a whole lot of water and stuff, and just try to hide it in there and use different lightings, and at night it looks stellar and stuff. But overall, I'm a bit, seriously, let me point that out. I'm really a bit disappointed about the eyes. I had high hopes into the eyes because Frontier made some great pieces also for Planet Coaster, and I was hoping to get some stuff like that. And honestly, whilst the texture is miles better than anything we had in Planet Coaster, the overall shading and the bluish tint is just way worse. And I don't believe they will change something, but I would believe to see some stuff in the future that hopefully works as better eyes. For example, like flat glass pieces without a boundary, without a frame or whatever, just the bare glass pieces. Actually, even they would make up for better eyes, I guess, because of the color scale, but the color scale of it. But well, all in all, I'm just a bit like. The texture, it has, I don't know what they did, but they have like this weird, how's it even called? I think it's like parallax effect going on, where you look into the eyes and it's kind of reflecting in a trippy way, and it almost looks like as if the eyes would be way thicker, but it's just a flat texture, but it looks like as if there's so much depth in it, and it looks so good and looks really great. But then again, just the color, it's just so blue. But yeah, let's not talk about eyes the whole episode, because you can see I was doing a whole lot of terraforming here, because I felt that the mountain behind the habitat doesn't look great, and I wanted to have a nice area to look at least, and also a nice area that welcomes the people, to not focus too much on the ugly shape of the rather ugly face, I should say, of the mountain, but really focus more onto the habitat which is down there, and just make sure that the nature around looks as natural as possible. I was struggling a bit here to find the right way to kind of get some texture, and I tried some new stuff here, but I figured it was way too complicated to kind of keep that going. So yeah, I was using these patches of stone and tried to align them to the mountain somewhat, and then just kind of use the terrain tool to slowly move that in and kind of create this little rocky face to it, which worked for a bit, but in general it didn't. So I just continued putting in pieces myself, and then just try to use the terrain paint tool, to make sure that they don't look as repetitive as they do right now. So at the end of the day, I was quite happy with how it turned out, but there is just so much more potential in it. I have to see what I can do in the future to create these mountains. Maybe I have to build like a shape first of all out of the rock pieces, and then kind of carve the terrain around to make sure that it looks a bit nicer. I just I tried also to get in with some nature here and there to make sure that it doesn't look as dull and as boring. And then I figured, oh, let's see, there is a Christmas tree. Wow, how great is that? So finally, I was struggling like an hour in the live stream, and now I just have one piece, clicked it down, and it took me like 10 seconds, and it was like, again, it happened again. But you know, that's part of the fun, and you do see it quite often that we do tend to build some stuff which Frontier edits, adds like a few weeks later, just organically into the game. It's nothing new. It almost is like, you just accept it. It's like, yeah, it happens. So that's the way it is. And yeah, I should say this is the way, but okay, I think this joke is already old, so let's not do that. But yeah, you can see I was testing around with them, some kind of fence pieces over here, and I ended up with a single design which I'm a big fan of by now. I'm really glad that I tried to build my own design here of the fence, and I used some of the new Arctic pieces, which after an update they even gave us some shorter versions. I don't know if they forgot about them, but all of a sudden when we looked into the game, there was a more choice of the pieces, so it kind of turned out really great looking, and I was super happy to have finally some shorter pieces. For example, this one over here, using this as a pillar and also as the top piece, is already one of the newer pieces. So yeah, this kind of entrance here, or the junction, is one of the first ones I'm going to tackle the way I do now, and you will see that quite more often in the zoo, that I will have these entrances, try to narrow them down, as you can see how I'm doing that over here. I'm just using the normal fence piece to make sure that it kind of integrates better into the environment, and then you have this opening, and I was using the bins actually to make sure that the staff members don't walk through, because actually the bin is the sole piece in the game that seems to have like a barrier towards staff and guests. So that's the only piece that they just don't walk through. Even benches they completely ignore, donation boxes they completely ignore, but the bins seem to have a very good model, or a very, very strong model. I don't know even what to say, but like they really, like, they do actually block people off, and you can use them to create a little bit of a guest flow if you have to hide something. So I was using that a bit here to make sure that they don't go into areas that are not allowed to, and just made sure that the entrances look a bit more narrow. But yeah, then I was getting in with nature to give this area a context. It's maybe not the final nature, but for the moment this is at least some kind of nice finishing touches to this area, even though it's by far not finished. I just figured I want to use the barrier to just get in with a chain link fence here, because like it's still, at the end of the day, it is a Siberian tiger, and this is something I didn't tackle when I was building the Siberian tiger habitat, because it was more focused on the habitat itself. So what I did here is also, you could not include these barriers anyways in the blueprint, so that was simply also a reason why I couldn't include them. But you can see I was just using a bit of a chain link fence here. This one is mainly here to prevent the people from going in, while the other one down there is obviously to keep the tigers inside the habitat. And since they actually added jumping to the cats now, the big cats, I had some severe issues, because some of my habitats were not safe anymore. They were fine before, but now as they could jump, they were able to jump into several spots that they weren't able to get to before. So yeah, I needed to change a few things about this habitat, but you won't really notice. It was just a placement of rocks and some pillars so that they just don't jump. Now, the next thing I'm tackling is something that I am really annoyed by for a long time already. I think I spoke about that quite a few times already. And this is the education board madness. Like, in a zoo, you basically never have the same education board, or at least in different areas. Like, you do have kind of the same-ish style, but sometimes they are like in a frame, sometimes they are integrated in a wall, sometimes it's like a screen, sometimes it's just a whiteboard, sometimes it's just a piece of paper, whatever. But it varies according to how modern this area is and how much you paid for it or whatever. And so I wanted to create like a bit more of a valuable education board, which I can use over here, and this is what I created briefly. You've seen that a few seconds ago for this area in particular, and yeah, I'm just happy with it. Now, the last thing we are doing is something I wanted to do and wanted to try for a longer time, but I never got to the point, and this time I'm finally doing it. I was quickly researching some pictures, but I found out then that after a while, okay, it doesn't really work out the way I wanted to, so I built a ramp into the bedding area for the snow leopard. And funny enough, they cannot traverse into the door frame, but the zookeeper can, and the big cat can just go through that opening in the wall. So we have two different entrances, one's for the zookeeper and the other one for the snow leopard. I wanted to do this to make sure that this kind of is a bit more realistic, so that the animals can still traverse into the habitat or whatever, even though there are some keepers going around or doing their job, you know. And I feel like I succeeded in making this really look nice and be functioning at the same time. Speaking of which, I just do some roof things here to make sure that the roof looks a bit more realistic. And that is about it, guys. This was today's episode of building a snow leopard habitat. Me personally, I really did enjoy this episode because I feel like it's one of my better habitats in this zoo so far, in terms of realism, but it also looks nice and it fulfills a certain purpose, and I'm just a very big fan of it. So question of the day, well, it's pretty straightforward. Do you like this habitat, and do you like the snow leopard in particular? And yeah, well, that's it. See you in the next one, guys, and have a wonderful, wonderful Saturday. Bye bye. Alrighty guys, thank you for watching this video. I really do appreciate that. As always, make sure to check out also my social media channels. You can find me everywhere under @RudyRunCamo. Also, big thanks to the crew. You can see it on the left hand side right now. And as always, if you want to see more, you click that card on the top right. And if you want to stick around because you like the stuff you've just saw, whatever, you know what I mean, just click that sub button, which is to the bottom right of the screen right now. But everything else I can say is have a great time and see you next time. Bye guys.
Looking at the